So I get an invitation from the Idaho Reading Association down in Boise, and they want me to come down and talk about my book. And so I slide through Cascade under cover of darkness, and I go down to Boise, and I do the thing at the reading conference at the Reading Association. And I knew I was such a I should have known that I was just going to get myself in more and more trouble. I started my speech out saying, I didn't know there were enough people in Idaho who could read to have an association, which is like way funnier here. And then I said, hell, I grew up in Idaho, before nobody actually killed me. But I'm headed back up to Spokane. I got to drive through Cascade, and I think, well, I'll stop and see my parents. So I drive up there and I stop to see my parents. I'm going to do it real quietly. But my mother died 3 blocks from where she was born. My mother lived in Cascade, Idaho all her life. She like owned Cascade. And I'm coming up there, and my mother is absolutely sure that the high school that her famous author's son came from would really want him to come up and talk about his book. And she was equally as sure that her son, the great author who came from Cascade, Idaho, would really want to go back to his high school and talk about his book. Neither of which was true. But you didn't mess with my mother. I mean, if my mother walked into your house in Cascade after Running Loose came out and you didn't have 2 copies on your like coffee table, woe be unto you. So I think, okay, I know how to do this. I'll go up there, and I still knew, I was quite a bit younger then, and I still knew some, kids of guys that I went to school with, or even younger siblings and things like that. And I think, well, I'll just go up there and I'll hang out on the lawn until I hear the 2nd bell ring, and then I'll just run to the library and give my presentation and go. I said, okay, but we want you to go to one English class. I said, well, I'll just hide in the library till the 2nd bell ring, right? So I go to the library, and kids are coming in from different classes and stuff, and I don't see Mr. Brackey anyplace, and I have come in in a very circuitous, avenue to miss his room. So I get in there and I talk about the book, and I get done and I start asking him for questions, and this kid raises his hand and he said, "Is that a real book?" I said, "Yeah, it's a real book. It's the only book you'll ever see that has my name on it that wasn't carved in there with a pocket knife." He said, "Yeah, but like if we were in New York, would this be a book?" I said, yeah, they put it together. They bought it. My publisher's in New York. And then he turns to the librarian and he said, how many people from Cascade have written novels? And she said, I think just Chris. And he said, how come the book isn't in the library? And she got really, really red and said, well, you can get the book here, but you have to check it out with a note from your parents in the office. So basically, the only building in town where you couldn't get Running Loose was the school library. So I'm thinking, whoa, who all have I offended? And I mean, I'd been offending people in Cascade for so long, it didn't really make a lot of difference. But then I had to go to the English class, so I wait for the 2nd bell, right? And I know where the English class is, and I know where the social studies room, and I can get to the English class, okay. And I run to English, and I go after the 2nd bell, walk in there, close the door, walk up to the front. What I don't know is Mr. Brackey is no longer the social studies teacher. He's the English teacher. Like, I walked down to the front of the room and I turned around, and there he is. And now his biceps are twice as big as my head because he's doing this. And so I started out, and he really wasn't as scary. He really wasn't as scary as I had him in my head. But I started the talk, and I said, I know you guys know that Mr. Brackey was my teacher here. He was my coach. I said, when you write fiction, you go all over the world. Tell your stories. You pick a character here, character here, character here. The coach in this book might sound like Mr. Brackey, but he's not Mr. Brackey. He's not Mr. Brackey. Oh, please believe me. He's not Mr. Brackey. And then like an idiot, I read the part of the story where the coach calls for an illegal hit on the player from the other team. And I get all finished, and I look around and say, okay, any questions? Kid right in the front row. Arm goes up. I say, yeah. He says, sure sounds like Brackey to me. I'm going, the last time I jumped out that window, I only sprained my ankle, but I'm older now. And it was really kind of funny because as I'm leaving, he was right by the door, and as I walk out, he gives me one of these, and he says, good job, Crutcher. And it was, it was cool.